Hello there, have you seen the performance of gold lately? Gold over here over the last couple of years since October 2023 has gained over 82%, and even looking at late last year, since November last year, it has already gained 32%. Are your investments doing as well, or do you need to catch up a little bit? One of the interesting ways of catching up with gold is perhaps looking at some of the juniors in metals, which have done 95% over the last couple of years during the same time period since around October 2023, 95 versus 82%. A bit of an outperformance by the juniors, but that's still nothing. Quite often this outperformance is much stronger, and looking at late last year, since November last year, the juniors have gained about 45%. Again, a bit of outperformance versus gold price itself, but near the ends of the bull market, this outperformance is usually much more spectacular. Today I want to have a look at one example of a very interesting, very promising junior in my opinion, and that is Inflection Resources. Inflection is exploring for gold and copper deposits in New South Wales in Australia. And very interestingly, they have an earn-in agreement with AngloGold Ashanti, where AngloGold is funding quite a lot of the exploration expenses, meaning that dilution is not particularly painful. Inflection also has a huge land package spanning for over 150 kilometers. And that land package is located in the Macquarie Arc. That's home to some of the world-class mines. We'll come to those examples in a minute, talking about Inflection's market cap. One of the reasons why it's so attractive to me is that even though Inflection hasn't given us any maiden resource estimates, it's still highly underpriced, at least in my opinion. Remember, this is not financial advice, with a market cap of just around $25 million. So while there are risks, there are always risks, especially investing into juniors, the upside potential in case of a successful discovery is substantial, it's enormous. And while in this video I'll just go through the main points of why Inflection is pretty interesting to me, there are much more details at myfinanceteacher.org. We've had a recent update on Inflection in the middle of last month, and similar to Inflection, there are many interesting stories over here in this category of juniors in metals. Again, that's at myfinanceteacher.org. Join us to stay informed of those exciting stories. After all, in the current fast-paced market, it's important to be an informed investor. Coming back to Inflection Resources, one of the important factors attracting me to Inflection Resources is their agreement, that's earn-in agreement, with AngloGold Ashanti. What do we mean by this earn-in agreement? That's when AngloGold Ashanti is earning their right for a particular percentage ownership of Inflection Resources projects. The earn-in agreement, as you see from the table on your screen, includes 4 phases. So far, only the first phase has been completed, where AngloGold Ashanti spent 10 million Australian dollars over the whole area, over the whole endowment, drilling for some indication of resources here and there along this huge land package. Since then, very recently, AngloGold Ashanti has moved on to the second phase of this earn-in agreement, and within the second phase they are going to focus on 4 of the most promising projects within that huge land package held by Inflection Resources. Remember, almost all of the exploration efforts made on the Inflection's land package are now funded by AngloGold Ashanti, which helps a lot against the dilution, where Inflection doesn't have to dilute as much. And dilution, of course, is a major turn-off from investing into juniors in metals. Hence, this earn-in agreement is a very important factor, which I think is going to be even more important going into the future, especially over the next 3 years, as the second phase does last for 3 years, 36 months, as you see over here. That's because over the last 3 years, during the duration of the first phase of this earn-in agreement, AngloGold Ashanti has spent $10 million on this whole land package, trying to test a little bit for some resource potential here and there. This time though, during the second phase, they're going to spend $28 million, that's Australian, but still nearly 3 times as much as in the first phase, but focusing on only 4 out of a couple of dozen projects that are held by Inflection Resources. So this second phase of the exploration is much more laser focused. Hence, over the next 3 years, over the next 36 months, I do expect much more favorable news flow from Inflection Resources compared to the last 3 years. Again, hinting at an even better share performance. By the way, talking about that share performance, as we have invested into Inflection quite a while back with the members at myfinanceteacher.org, we are already enjoying a very comfortable cushion. All the details are in the model portfolio. Coming back to this earning agreement with AngloGold Ashanti, did you think that was all? There's more here. Inflection is earning 10% management fee from these exploration efforts funded by the AngloGold Ashanti. So over the next 3 years, that's around 2.8 million Australian dollars in 10% management fees paid to Inflection Resources from AngloGold Ashanti. And yet there is more. So far, as you see, even though AngloGold Ashanti has already completed the first phase, they do not have any project ownership within that huge land package held by Inflection Resources. Over the next 3 years, if the second phase is completed, only then will AngloGold hold slightly over half, that's 51%, of these 4 projects, again, out of that huge land package with a lot more exploration potential. So without accomplishments reaching those specific milestones, including PFS for example, which are often quite expensive for juniors, there will be no increase in the project ownership for AngloGold Ashanti. Hence, Inflection Resources does stay still very attractive, especially over the next 3 years, as AngloGold is focusing the exploration efforts on these 4 projects out of the whole land package. Talking about that land package, it spans, as we said, for around 150 kilometers. That's huge. If you have this land package somewhere in Nevada, that would include quite a bit of majors, all sharing such a huge land package. And it's not just anywhere, it's within the Macquarie Arc, which already includes some of the world's giants, including Cadia, Kowal and North Parks. Just to give you some examples, for example, only in 2023, that's in 1 year, these 3 giants together produced metals worth of $3.4 billion, and that's just in 1 year. So the potential here is enormous, but of course we first need to see some further exploration success. And talking about that exploration success, if I'm not mistaken, first mineralized intercept was reported by Inflection Resources pretty recently in February 2025, spanning over 54 meters of mineralization. That is not outstanding, but it definitely is very encouraging. So there is still a potential for the discovery. They're specifically looking for a major copper-gold porphyry system. So again, yes, if they are successful over the next several years, that will reflect wonderfully on their share prices. By the way, talking about financials, they are pretty well cashed up right now. As of the Q4 2024 report, that's by the end of December 2024, they already had $2.8 million Canadian in cash, and wait for it, they have no long-term debts. Plus, as you already know, almost all of their exploration efforts, yes, they are funded by AngloGold Ashanti. So the dilution is simply minimal. By the way, less than a couple of weeks ago, I talked about dilution by some of the select interesting juniors in this video titled Gold Miners Comparison at my YouTube channel, so go check that out. The link is down in the description. Make sure to pay attention because, as I mentioned, dilution is a major factor in looking at juniors. Coming back to Inflection's financials, the shares are quite tightly held with 2/3 of shares within some of the 12 largest shareholders. And those, by the way, include AngloGold Ashanti itself, which very recently, as a reward for completing the first stage, received 9.9% of these newly issued shares. And yes, talking about issuing those shares, as it is adds to dilution, over the last 2 years, since September 2023, the amount of shares outstanding from Inflection Resources has increased by only 28% in 2 years, and that's including this 9.9, including this 10% increase in shares outstanding that is given into those tight hands held by AngloGold Ashanti. So last 2-year dilution is simply minimal. And besides AngloGold Ashanti, which is like a bit of a beacon of endorsement from a major towards this junior here, beyond AngloGold Ashanti, a lot of the shares are held by Crest Capital, another beacon of endorsement, as well as Resource Capital Funds, a bit of a smaller beacon of endorsement as well. So while I'm not your financial advisor and you have to do your own due diligence, it's wonderful to see these majors supporting Inflection Resources as well. So the investment case is definitely there, although of course there are risks. The upside optionality is outstanding, but of course success does depend on exploration results. So far the drill results are quite promising. Phase 2, I think, will be much more exciting. It might actually turn out to be a major catalyst because there will be more news flow concentrated on some of the most interesting projects within that huge land package. So the next 3-year upside might actually be even better. And yet again, let me just finish with reminding you that I am not your financial advisor, and investing into mining, especially juniors, is quite risky. So keep your positions accordingly relatively small. Nevertheless, you might have noticed from my voice that I am quite a bit excited by Inflection Resources, but perhaps I'm biased here. Let me know what you think about Inflection down in the comments below. And perhaps there might be other suggestions of what else you'd like me to have a look at. It might, by the way, be already discussed in detail, in much more detail over here at Juniors in Metals category at myfinanceteacher.org. So make sure to join us. See you there. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye bye.